Support for this episode comes from Modern Football Technology. Modern Football Technology provides real-time opponent tendencies and self-scout while eliminating manual data entry into Huddle, DV Sport, and Exos. If you're tired of tools that are time-consuming to learn and perform inconsistently at best, then we recommend Modern Football for a fresh perspective. Schedule a demo today at teammofo.com to see a battle-tested tool that's proven to perform and deliver value. Mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code CC10 to receive 10% off your first year. And listen to our recent episode featuring Folsom High School defensive coordinator Jordan Ersick to learn more about how the 2023 California State Champion uses modern football to dominate their opponents.
That's my thing, is that the guys get the rep they're going to get in the game. I want them to get that rep so they can play with confidence, so we can go in at halftime and we can say, hey, they're doing exactly what we told you they're going to do. You know exactly how to play it. Let's go play with confidence, play fast.
Finding the most efficient way to practice and effectively prepare players is something that coaches are always searching for. Western Illinois defensive coordinator Todd Drury created a way to get his players the reps they need with a focus on the mental side of the game. Coach Drury evolved his walkthrough into a period in which his players are able to get more reps while gaining the understanding of what the offense is trying to do, in addition to their reaction and required decision-making within their defensive calls. In this episode from our archives, Coach Drury explains the setup and rationale behind the format for this practice segment. The result is that his defensive players are seeing far more reps than they would if they were just scrimmaging and getting more in terms of recognition and visual cues than if they were doing a walkthrough. We share our winning edge takeaways and ideas for implementation following the interview. What you see on tape is a direct reflection of what you teach and how you teach. Video is important, but if you don't teach well, you're not going to like what you see on your video. First Down Playbook has been helping coaches teach better for 13 years. It allows you to present installs, playbooks, and practice cards in half the time with NFL quality. Coaching tools like video pairing, a player app, practice schedules, and wristband sheets have made First Down Playbook a program management system with everything in one place. If you're in a position of leadership with your football program, receive a free 1-week look at First Down Playbook. Call them at 512-814-6158 or visit them on their website or social media. Mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code COACH24 to receive a $100 discount off the normal $700 First Down Playbook team membership price. Links and the phone number are in the show notes. This concept of how you guys practice, and I was very intrigued by it for a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's a very efficient way to do things. You guys are getting a ton of reps. You're really making it the mental side of things. And then what we're getting across the board, really college level, high school level, reaching all the way down to youth, that there are limits on the amount of time we can have contact within what we do. And I think that's going to be a trend that continues as we put player safety at the forefront of this game, is that we have to be innovative with how we do things. So what might have worked for us 10, 20 years ago with us lining up for 25 minutes and just scrimmaging and going full go might not be the best way to do that anymore. And really, we have to separate a lot of times, I think, some of that physical from the mental and decide how much of that physical contact work do we need versus how much are we really out there wanting to improve our players' recognition, their vision, their decision-making. And what you guys have done in this idea you shared with me, I think, accomplishes everything we're looking for and keeps up with some of the demands of what's being placed on us today.
A lot of it comes back to, we teach from a concept standpoint of concept, alignment, key, and execution. And then if the guys know where to get lined up and they know what their assignment is and they have their eyes in the right spot, then they can focus on their technique. If those things, if they know their assignments and they can play fast, then their techniques and everything improves. If they're still thinking about their assignment when the ball's snapped, they're not going to be thinking about their technique or reacting defensively.
And that's what you guys have been able to build in this. You guys get a ton of reps, and it's something that evolved. And as you and I were talking about how this started, really was some of the demands or limitations, I guess, placed on practices where at the NCAA level, you get one per day and you get a walkthrough. So you want to be as efficient as possible with the time you have. And so that's where this concept and this format evolved for you.
Yeah, so we were coming into camp and we had 4 groups defensively, and we were trying to figure out how to get everybody alignment assignment. How do we get lined up? How do we get to the call? And so obviously we had a walkthrough format where it started with a set of cans, and we had offensive formation. You have a group out and you call it the call, you get everybody lined up. So then we kind of evolved that to 2 sets of cans, and then we got to 3 sets of cans, and so we had a set of cans on the right hash, middle of the field, and left hash, and we put out bags for formations. And then we'd have, 1 group in the hole or on deck, and then 3 groups out with 3 different coaches, and they're running through formations and calls, and we scripted it out. And, we got really efficient with, we were getting a lot of reps, 25 reps in 10 minutes or so. And it was great because we were getting everybody lined up. Everybody's getting a different formation on a different spot of the field because we know how much that changed things. We were really moving through it. And what we realized was once we got into the season with scout teams, we were like, let's just replace those bags out there. That was the number 2 receiver. Let's put the scout team out there, the offensive players. And so then basically we started putting 2 sets of cans on the same hash, 20 yards apart, and there'd be a coach at each set of cans, and they'd have 5 scout players with them, offensive skill players. You'd have a script, a printed out script, and they would have scout cards, and the defense would be in the middle. So if the defense was facing the north set of cans, about 50%, they'd run through a play. They'd get the routes or they'd get the run action with the RPOs, all those things. We'd run our calls, and then they'd flip right around on a whistle, and now they're right there, and they set up the next formation. D-line has to jog down about 20 yards, set up the next formation, run the next play. And so it was a rapid fire, about 50% speed, but we were able to get, all the routes, all the RPOs, all of our calls in. That period kind of grew and grew and grew for us last season. We're like, last year we do an inside run period, we do a team period, and then the rest would be on cans, honestly.
How did this format then compare in terms of reps to your traditional practice that you used before?
Yeah, I felt like defensively, when we had a scout period, we're limited on scout players to start with. Our scout O-line is, those guys are working their tails off, but that's not always the best look. And so in that 10-minute period, if we're getting 12 quality reps, I think we were going pretty good with the guys that we had. And so the can period, we've gotten as many as 30 reps in 10 minutes. So we were basically we were rotating every 4 plays. And so, yeah, as far as the amount of reps go, it was almost triple. And you can push it as fast as you want. But we would really, we'd go through the rep, and sometimes we'd do it twice. We'd make sure that guys were aligned perfectly and their eyes were in the right spot. D-line was hitting their aiming points, linebackers were reading their keys, all those things. You can slow it down or speed up as much as you want, honestly.
As coaches, we know that some of the biggest hurdles to our team's success can come from off the field. Your team needs support to tackle the endless list of expenses, uniforms, training equipment, travel, and more. But raising that money can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, there's Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise is the premier online fundraising platform using innovative technology to create the easiest and most efficient system available. Raise more money in less time with a local fundraising coach who works with your team every step of the way to customize the ideal fundraiser. With options for online donations, digital discount cards, premium product sales, and even spirit shops, Vertical Raise has top-of-the-line solutions for every fundraising style. To find out more, visit verticalraise.com and we'll get you connected with an exclusive offer on your first fundraiser. And it really is determining what you want out of this. It's not purely we're going to get more reps. It's determining what you want out of those reps. So instead of saying we're going to put more emphasis on the physical, you say, well, we really need to recognize, we really need to understand our keys, we really need work on the mental side of things. And so you created this format then that it works exactly to accomplish that. And that's the value really of any good practice period, is you get out of it what you want to accomplish.
We're still getting all of our physical contact in as well. We start with pre-practice, and we do our circuits, and we do our individual drills, and we're doing crossover with the offense. And we are still doing, the old school, scout period where we get the full speed rep versus the O-line and, all those things. But then those last 2 periods of the day, we've gotten that work in. We've ran to the ball. We've pursued the ball. We've gotten off blocks. We've covered the different concepts with whatever we're pattern reading, whatever we're doing. And now let's just make sure we're getting the extra reps. Because, like, one of the things I'm huge on is if we're going to ask a kid to be perfect in a game, you want him to do his job 100 out of 100 times, then is he getting enough reps of that particular defensive call versus that particular offensive play? Are you getting every rep in practice to hold that kid accountable to being right 100% of the time? Because if you're blitzing the run, then are you seeing that blitz versus that same side of the run play? How many of those reps does the kid get during the week? Because I bet you if you go back and look, a lot of defense coordinators, that kid will have gotten that rep based off his rotation, based off that blitz versus that play call. That kid might have gotten that rep 2 times that week, potentially. And we're asking him to be perfect 100% of the time, where in this format, without killing our bodies, we are getting every rep versus every play call, and we are fitting it up. And so our defensive execution just went through the roof. I felt like assignment-wise, we didn't have missed assignments. We had, obviously technique and different things, but as far as the guys going where they're supposed to go and doing what they're supposed to do, because then the other thing is, like, we stopped lining up in our normal stuff, and everybody watches our tape and see it, but like, we are going to disguise what we're doing, and we're going to show one thing. We're going to show blitz. We're going to back it out. We're going to bring it from that side. We'll show blitz one side, bring it from the other side. We'll 2 high, 1 high, Tampa 2 look. I mean, we have different alignments on the back end, and if we can do more of that stuff without increasing the playbook, but you just got to make sure you see it versus all the looks you're going to see on Saturdays. And so that's why I'm just such a huge fan of it. I mean, it was huge for us this year, I feel like.
When you look at the guys up front, because they're facing cans, they're not facing bodies coming at them, how do you make this still very valuable for them? What is it from a mental standpoint that you really want those guys focused on to get the most out of these periods?
Yeah, so anytime we're going to walk through the D-line, we have, we key men, we don't key the ball. And so we just have them, wherever their visual key is, we want them putting their hands there on the snap and then stepping through their gap. And so they're always attacking the line of scrimmage, laying their hands on a can, whether they're moving 1 gap, 2 gaps, whether they're playing knockoff or an edge technique. They're always landing their hand on the aiming point and then playing through their gap. And then we'll tell if there's, different teams do, different exotic things up front. And so if there's a look where we're getting a backside fold block or, out with the guard and a fold behind with the tackle or something, we have already gotten that rep in Indy. We've already gotten that rep in inside run. We already got that rep in the team period. And so we'll tell them, hey, you're getting that X block on the backside here. So sometimes we'll give them those clues, based off the formation of the play. We'll just tell them what's coming. In their mind, they're like, okay, yeah, this is that play. But we have already gotten those reps. We're just not getting 100 of those reps up front. So we try to always hit our aiming points. We try to make sure that the D-line's still coming off the ball. If you see on tape, when I go back and watch these, you'll see the D-line as they're rushing the passer. Say we're running it's a third down period, and we're running some of our blitzes or stuff. You'll see them come off the edge, and then they're working their hands on air. They're working their moves. So they're mentally engaged. And I think that's one thing, though, that is important from, like, our team this last year. They were the best team that I've been around so far at snapping in and locking in. And when it was time to focus on what I'm supposed to do, they were fully focused. And when that period was over, then they were relaxed. But they just did a great job of, like, hey, this is what I should be doing right now. I should be working on my pass rush technique. I should be thinking about the set or the overset of the O-lineman, and I'm going to go ahead and work my hands and my move. And so they could really handle that from a mental perspective of staying engaged in that. And I thought that's important too, with these periods. I mean, because if your guys get out of control, I mean, you got to make sure they're locked in, they're dialed into what they're doing, and they know the purpose behind it. They know their why, so that way they can get the value out of it too.
Well, I can certainly see the value of this for a college program, but I can certainly see the value of this for a college program, but there's a lot of high schools out there that certainly just hurt for numbers and maybe don't have enough guys to fill in that second scout team. So this serves purposes probably even better for them to be able to do this and use a format like this. As you pointed out, you're still able to get those physical reps and a lot of reps in the individual parts. It's now when you're trying to put together those all 22 and really get the reps out of it. So if you have a smaller roster, this has a high value in practice to be able to get the reps you need for all those things on the mental side of it. The value here is huge because we see that all the time. We're able to do things on the offensive side of the ball, even if it's just plays on air, routes on air, that allow you to get some of the reps you need on the mental part. But now I think you've taken that kind of concept and flipped it over to the defensive side.
Offensively, it's different because you're dictating the formation, you're dictating the tempo offensively. So I think it's easier to run like offenses for years have been doing plays on air, right? You just run through a drive, and you can run the ball, throw the ball, you do all those things. And that's what defensively we haven't been able to do. We haven't been able to run plays on air because we didn't know where to line up. And so this is kind of like our version of plays on air. But I could see, like, if you're running, if you had a 10-play script of plays on air or whatever, a tempo period or whatever, and you could throw out 4 DBs, and maybe get your 1 high, 2 high reads or whatever you're reading offensively. If you're reading the alley defenders, throwing out alley defenders, or reading corners, or putting guys out where they could, change post snap. Because I think defensively, that's one thing I try to do is make the quarterbacks make a decision post snap, especially with all the RPOs. So if we're moving post snap and they're supposed to be reading something post snap, then I think that helps us a ton in the mental side of things, on putting more on the quarterback's plate. And so I think if you can simulate that in practice, whatever that read key is for the quarterback, whether it's just zone read or whether it's a bang 8, and making sure that he's getting those inside of those, so whether it's just a shell or something like that, maybe.
The one thing we do have in common, regardless of the size of our program and the number of players we have available in practice, is time. So I think this is a great way to look at how do you maximize your time? How do you get more out of something like plays on air or routes on air? And it's putting some of those key defenders out there. So maybe you don't have all 22 bodies in a program that are going to give you the look, but is that what you need to get the recognition required for the execution? As you said before, handling things in other periods, maybe on the physical side, allows you then to refocus how you use some of these other periods. And I think what you pointed out here are just some great use cases for how you make the most out of a practice period. And yes, you could always walk through, but this gives you something much more dynamic than a walkthrough period, and really more bodies involved as well.
The downfall of the walkthrough, the old school walkthrough, is that you got one group out there, and then you got the rest of the team behind you, thinking about who knows what, and then there's no post snap reaction. So I think just kind of trying to mix all that together as much as possible to get the most out of it, while not, once we get mid-season, we are conditioned, we know our techniques, so it's not, we have ran to the ball already that day. It's not about that. It's about making sure our alignment, assignment, and execution is key, on the blitzes, and just being the most efficient you can with your time inside of those periods, and making sure that the guys, that's my thing, is that the guys get the rep they're going to get in the game. I want them to get that rep so they can play with confidence, so we can go in at halftime and we can say, hey, they're doing exactly what we told you they're going to do. You know exactly how to play it. Let's go play with confidence, play fast.
I appreciate you sharing this idea with us. It's a simple one, but I think something that can be very effective for coaches around the country at every level. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks, Keith.
Here are our winning edge takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1. Find ways to maximize reps in practice, but remember that there should always be a focus behind those reps and context that gives the session as much direct application to game reps as possible. We drill in smaller groups or individual because it's the most efficient way to hone mental and physical skills of our players. Coach Drury created this segment to work on the mental side of the game for his defense. He values this session as much as 11 on 11 and even films it to evaluate what his players did correctly and what they can get better at. Regardless of what you create, use the measure of how does this replicate what happens in the game and what is the specific purpose in that regard. 2. Apply the mental side to every drill. Context is always important. To illustrate what I mean by this, I'll use the example of how I did this with quarterbacks. If it was an individual drill working on drops and maybe a key read, we would have the quarterback go through his mental process of calling the protection, taking his eyes to pre-snap keys, even if imaginary, and filling the blanks in for him so he knew the framework of what he was working with. That would start with the play call, us identifying that maybe it's a 2-high structure, identifying where the 3 technique so he could make his protection call, etc. The extra 10 seconds went a long way in tying the mental processes to the physical. Coach Drury did the same thing with how his defensive linemen got their work in, even though they were facing inanimate objects of trash cans. 3. Regardless of if you're a coordinator or position coach, step back and evaluate your practices and drills. With the first 2 takeaways in mind, Just going through your current practice period and drills and thinking about how you can get more out of it with your players can go a long way in improving their understanding of when, why, and how techniques are used rather than teaching them in isolation. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please share it with other coaches. Go to coachingcoordinator.com for enhanced show notes with links to related episodes, resources, articles, and with our Winning Edge takeaways detailed in text. When we post the enhanced show notes for this episode, it will include a diagram of the setup of Coach Drury's practice segments as well as practice video. Sign up for our free weekly tip sheet, which highlights the best ideas from the previous week, trending episodes, and featured resources. Follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.